it well. Played it very, very, very well indeed.
No more slices for you.
Oh, look at that for judgment.
You'll learn.
Hello, welcome to Slice. This is one of those weeks in golf that our podcast really feels like it was made for, because we've got what you might call a rank and file DP World Tour event, but one with real history and one I'm sure Sam feels similarly to me about. We've got Open qualifying. If you're listening to this any later than Tuesday evening, that will have finished by now. But obviously that's going to add loads of storylines ahead of the Open, which is just a couple of weeks away. We've got a Hotel Planner Tour event at a course which claims to be all sorts of things that it definitely is not. And loads to talk about from last week as well. So plenty to cover. First of all, though, Sam, I believe, consults his notes, it's your son's birthday today, which is particularly great for your son because he gets to share a birthday with my wedding anniversary. So big day, big day.
I'll tell him. He'll be thrilled.
He will. I'm sure.
Yes, he is. He's turned 10 today. Had his football party yesterday, and can I just tell you, a room full of 18 10-year-olds with food and drink involved is an absolute nightmare. I cannot stress this enough. Just don't do it. Just find a way of just not avoiding that situation.
Do you know, forgive me for saying this, I feel I can say it because I know that I look permanently tired and I look a lot older than I actually am. I thought you looked a bit tired, and I was putting it singularly down to the very late finish to the Rocket Classic, but now I know that that you were already beaten up, and now you've had to stay the course for that as well.
It's very much both, Ben. It's a combination, but yeah, there's definitely bags under my eyes. You spotted it well. I believe, consulting my notes, that you played golf on Friday.
Yeah, and I know, look, the last time I played golf, I think I had a story. I had a really good shot. There's four of us that are playing like once a month at the moment, mixing up the pairs, whatever. I probably played as well as I've played in about 20 years, I think, on Friday. And I mean, I played what I would consider to be the best course in Leicestershire, so it's hard, and it's rock hard at the moment. So I scored 35 points to my handicap, but I just haven't played better than that, I don't think, for like 20 years. And anyway, it all came down. I was in the team against the member who plays off 3.3, but for some reason was off 5. I don't know why. And they complain about my handicap. But anyway, he had an eagle and 4 birdies, I think. But we'd started well and were well up in the match early on. Anyway, came down to the final hole, right? I have hit the drive of my life, and I mean that. It's a drivable 18th for most like long hitters, but I didn't think it was drivable for me. The 3 handicappers hit it to 25 feet, just a phenomenal shot. But I was like almost pin high, so I just don't hit drives like that.
Okay, what yardage are we talking, Ben? I've got to know.
280 downwind, I would say.
Yeah,
I'm not
hard
a big
conditions.
Hitter. There's not a lot of me, but for me it was a massive. I started hitting a draw, which is really encouraging, and it went a long way. Obviously, it was hard underfoot as well, but I just could not have hit it any better. Anyway, I've got up there and I've got a tight lie, like a burnt grass. I've got a bunker between me and the flag, and I've got 20 yards to carry. This is not my area of comfort, despite the heroics I referenced on a previous episode. So I've sculled my pitch. Thankfully, it smashed into the face of a bunker and dropped down to the middle of the bunker. So at this point, having been one up playing the 18th, I figure we've lost the match. Well, we lost the hole, and we'll tie the match, and it's a shame. But I left myself 12 feet. The 3 handicapper missed his eagle putt. I had 12 feet for the match, and it went in. So it was great, fun finish.
Lovely stuff. So the reverse Jake Knapp, basically. Yeah,
essentially, yes, the reverse Jake Knapp. Yeah. So yeah, it's good. It's nice to be enjoying playing golf again, because I've had a lot of years where I've just felt completely not knowing what I'm doing, but I actually know what I'm doing now. So I think everything's looking good for a 40s renaissance for me.
Long may that last, Ben.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's talk about last week's events in the world of professional golf. Not that I don't enjoy talking about your golf game, Ben, of course.
Sure.
Let's start with the Italian Open. Adrien Saddier won his first DP World Tour title. I've got to say, Ben, I didn't watch much of this because of the aforementioned party for my son. I watched maybe 4 or 5 holes on the front 9. At the time I left, I think it was around about the turn, and it looked like Kuvra was very much in the driver's seat. So you might have to tell me what happened after that.
Yeah, he made back-to-back bogeys, didn't he? He didn't do that much wrong, really, but he made back-to-back bogeys. One of them was a very short miss, and you wonder if that bled into the next hole where he hit a really poor shot to a difficult par 3, and then couldn't get up and down. And then he made a bogey on one of the short, was it the 16th, when Saddier made birdie, and that was kind of the game was up then. But Saddier played really well. He hit one in really close on the par 3 early on in the back 9. Again, I think maybe the 13th is that. 200 DP World Tour starts before getting off the mark, but in some ways it had been coming, I think, because I think over the last sort of 2 years, maybe a bit less than that, he's really delivered on the promise that he did have when he was sort of one of the brightest young talents in France. Very precocious, and he's the player we were looking for, really, but he'd had a difficult spring. But we said, didn't we, it's going to be keep your ball in play and then dial in the approach shots, and that's his game to a T. He's not a big hitter, and yeah, it'd kind of been coming. He just had a bit of a spring lull, but he took his chance wonderfully well.
Well, can I just say about the spring lull, because I was intrigued about this. I saw his interview. I think it was on Friday after the round. It could have been Saturday, but he basically said he had a bout of illness at the start of the European swing, and if you look at his results, he withdrew and then he missed the cut. Back-to-back starts, and that came after a phenomenal start to the season. Really, I mean, he was playing really, really well. So it's one of those things where you don't really know about it when it happens, and you sort of, as a punter, you almost sort of just scratch him off. You think, okay, well, he's just, he's in a bout of poor form, I'll leave him. But actually, he wasn't really. He was just ill, and he played a couple of, missed a couple of cuts, and actually, he was still in form. But we kind of forget about him, or at least I think you and I did. But
yeah,
obviously a player with immense talent. So yeah,
he always has been. He's always been a really tidy player. He's not a world beater, but he's a really tidy player. And I will say this for, said 1,000 times now, the line between winning and losing is so thin. It's hard to win when you've had that many starts on the DP World Tour, but it shows you it can be done. But I don't know if you saw his shot on the 18th. Like, he knows at this point that bogey will win, and he was like in the fringe. And it was one of those where, like on a Thursday or Friday, you chip it because that's the shot you need to get a bit of check. But he was chipping towards the water. And the only way you can lose this tournament is if you scull this chip. I mean, this is a professional chip sculler talking, and these guys don't think like that. But I think it was David Howell on commentary who was like, I can't believe he's not putted that. Because he could 4-putt, I think, to win. And he could 3-putt. Anyway, he played the chip, and he's got guts.
Yeah, well, I mean, I looked at. I didn't see the shot actually, but I looked at the scores, and he shot a 30 on the back 9, I believe, which is pretty impressive when you're seeking your first title. I mean, obviously he was playing the role of chaser, I suppose, for a lot of that, but that's still a good way to win your first event. One thing I did want to talk about, Ben. So this was mentioned by Irish on Tour account on Twitter, who often engages with our posts, and he raised the concern about the Category 12 players. So in case you don't know what Category 12 is, these are the players who have come off the PGA Tour. They're ranked between 126 and 175, is it, Ben?
I think so,
or 200. And they can come over and they can play on the DP World Tour. Basically, the 5 people can per week, and it depends which 5 want to play, and it's ranked based on where you finished on the FedEx Cup ranking last year. But this week in particular, it was particularly bad because they all missed the cut. All 5 of them missed the cut, and they shot a combined 52 over. And I think this particular account's, idea is really they should get rid of this category completely. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I did want to get your take on it, Ben, because it does seem like it's maybe. I can see why people might be aggrieved by it.
Yeah, I have to say, when it first was introduced, I thought, I don't remember having a particularly strong opinion, but I at least felt, well, look, I can understand why this deal has been done. It works both ways. Like, the DP World Tour is getting 10 PGA Tour cards, so to give 5 DP World Tour cards, in effect, it's not quite apples and apples there, but didn't feel like an unreasonable thing to do. And actually, I thought there might be some upside. And I think in a world where the PGA Tour is more final with its cards, and particularly if the PGA Tour gets even slimmer and they go to this 100 cards model, They just won't ever go to a proper 100 cars model. But in that world, I can see how it would be of benefit to both parties. I can see as well that for certain players, it would feel like a better option than the Corn Ferry Tour. I suppose Brandon Wu's a great example. He could have gone and played the Corn Ferry Tour this year, and I think it probably surprised a lot of people that he hasn't. But he's come over to the DP World Tour. Maybe he wants to travel. Maybe he values the history of some of the events he gets to play. I don't know. You'd have to speak to him. But Callum Tarrant's probably the one who sort of has been the best fit because he is European in the first place, an Englishman who actually had never had a DP World Tour card. And it's not felt like a bad thing that he's been able to come over, having lost his full status last year. So I suppose my ultimate take is that the system's either good or it's bad, and that 1 week should not colour your
absolutely,
opinion.
Yeah.
But in an ideal world, these guys would be on the Corn Ferry Tour. And I do question. I think I saw a bit of this conversation, and I don't know who was involved in it. I didn't take part, but I think there was some talk about, right, if you're going to do it, maybe you should have to commit to a certain number of events, something like that. I don't like the idea of people turning up for one event, keeping someone out who's gone to Q School last year and in theory got their card. But it all comes back to this point that there are too many DP World Tour members one way or another.
Well, the other thing is regarding the, just turn up and play when you fancy, is the notion that someone like Callum Tarrant, who's very much committed to this pathway this year, is then bumped off the list. Presumably he wanted to play the Italian Open, but he was lower down the pecking order, I'm assuming. I don't know that for sure. But, the idea, I think I do agree with the notion that you should commit to X number. Maybe you say, right, I'm going to play 5 DP World Tour events this year, but just coming over and just, playing 1 or 2 when you fancy it. I'm not, I don't know. It doesn't feel like a perfect system, but then again, it's still relatively new, so maybe there are still tweaks happening. And like you say, if the cards in the PGA Tour, if the cards are reduced to 100, then in theory, the quality of the players who might be coming over would be increased. But of course, that relies on those players who are on that kind of on the bubble wanting to come over and play on the DP World Tour, which is not always going to be the case.
That's true. That's true. I just think there's the other scenario that you have to bear in mind, that what if Brandon Wu, who was like a top class amateur, almost won on the PGA Tour a couple of times, if he comes over, wins the Ras Al Khaimah, wins again in Kenya, flying high in Italy last week, you think, well, this is great. We're seeing like a genuinely brilliant golfer here. And part of the beauty of the DP World Tour is its internationalism, isn't it? So to have a few more they're largely Americans. I know we've had like Jonas Blix and Sung Kang, and Martin Traynor is now French, and a few others. But Kevin Chappell's been one. We've had Troy Merritt seems to have given it a good go, doesn't he? Yeah. And again, Troy Merritt's a multiple PGA Tour winner. He's a very, very qualified golfer. I suppose again, I'd find it less of an issue if these were filling the field rather than taking spots. We hear that phrase a lot. You're taking spots from someone. These actually are like, these are keeping almost every week. They're keeping out players from Q School. The guys like Will Besseling, top of my head example. He's a veteran journeyman Dutchman, never won on the DP World Tour. He wants to be the next Adrien Saddier. He goes to Q School at the back end of last year, having just missed his card on the road to Mallorca. He gets it done at Q School, and he's sitting watching whoever it may be shoot 20 over par.
Martin
Traynor was dreadful, wasn't he?
Very, very bad. Yeah.
So it's definitely, I see the downside to it.
The plus side is that Martin Traynor will get to play his National Open in a few weeks' time. So
yeah, good for him. Good for him.
Right, on to the Rocket Classic. So Aldrich Potgieter won. It's a 5-hole playoff. As we've referenced, I stayed up to the bitter end of that, and it was good. I mean, Grazeman, I thought he was the favourite going into the playoff. Certainly after the point that Chris Kirk bowed out, and he was really solid actually, Grazeman, but he just didn't quite make the putts when he needed to. Potgieter, I got to say, he was, there's a bit of harsh talk about his. I realise he's not the best chipper in the world. And because of the fact he's just all power, that I think people kind of look at it and sort of see him as one-dimensional. I think that's a little bit harsh, because actually when it came back to the par 3 in the playoff the second time around, so he'd airmailed the green the first time, not airmailed, sorry, he'd bounced and rolled off the green first time, Anyway, second time he did adjust his shot, and you could tell he went a lot softer at it, and then he ended up 20 feet, 25 feet short of the cup, and then he made the putt. So he was able to make that adjustment. He's not just all full throttle the whole time. And I enjoy seeing him win. He's 20 years old. He's already won. I think he's joined a very elite club of under 21 winners on the PGA Tour, and he's got obviously a huge career ahead of him. Did you watch much of it, Ben?
Yeah, I did see quite a bit, including the winning moment. I had gone to sleep, but then my baby very kindly woke me up to make sure I didn't miss it. I think you've made a really good point there, that it's really important in this age in particular that we don't characterize every new, young, powerful player as a sort of speed merchant who can't do anything else. He's a very, very gifted player. I think he'd be a lot of fun to watch. I mean, he's won the amateur championship, right? And you'd have to go and ask Matt Cooper, but he was there that week and he was dead impressed with him. And I'm sure we saw an array of, flighted long irons off the tee and stuff like that. Like, there's no way, even though the amateur championship is amateur golf and it's not, it's not as hard to win as a PGA Tour event maybe or whatever. Like, there's no way you can win it without showing I think he won it at Lytham, didn't he? You've got to show a variety of shots. He does have a weakness, but is probably the most common weakness, and it is by far the weakness of choice. Like, if you've got to have a weakness, choose to be a bad chipper, because it doesn't really matter that much. Like, it doesn't, especially on the PGA Tour. But the in the simplest terms, the weeks where you've got a chance to win, you're not going to be chipping a lot anyway. You can't, okay, the odd player is probably, I think Dylan Fratelli, maybe off the top of my head, when he won the John Deere Classic, had one of those weeks where he chipped in 3 times or whatever happened. But basically, if you want to win on the PGA Tour, you got to hit the ball well for a week and not worry about having to chip too often. So it's not going to hold him back too much, I don't think. We've seen, the most high-profile example be Victor Hovland. It might have cost him a tournament here and there, don't get me wrong, but it's not stopped him becoming a member of the elite. And given the freakish power, is it freakish? I've said freakish, I'll stick with it. But given the power of Potgieter and the fact that he's contended 3 times already at the age of 20 on the toughest tour in the world, who knows how far he can go. But, you and I were talking about where the next big star comes from South Africa a few months ago, and he's very clearly put himself at the top of the pecking order.
Definitely has. Yeah, and it's got to be said, there is a certain type of course that you really want to keep him on side. Sure. Let's make no mistake of that. If you have a course where there's going to be low scoring, there isn't long rough, and it's a sort of big hitters paradise, you want to play Potgieter. There's no two ways about that. So. And actually, if you look at the final leaderboard, 4 of the top 5 were legitimately bombers. Kirk was the only outlier there. So
totally, that's I mean, I would have been frustrated if Grayson had won, because I went with Matt Fitzpatrick instead of the two. I actually wrote about them in the same sort of. They were basically both arrived there, hitting the ball well, but good putters putting badly, and it was which one, if either, would turn it around. And although Grayson missed a 10-foot putt to win, it was his putter that carried him into that tournament. Just a very quick word on Fitzpatrick. He has led the field in strokes gained tee to green twice in his career. Obviously, a lot of his DP World Tour starts prior to 2019 weren't measured in that. But one was a US Open win. And sadly, last week, so bad was his putting that he couldn't even land the full place money in a Rocket Classic. So I feel a bit hard done by there, because I saw this sort of performance coming, and it's a real pity he didn't hold the putts. But take me out of it, as we definitely should. For Europe, for him, this is a massive step in the right direction, and I hope he can. I hope he can build on it.
I think that he's looked at our European Cup, our European Ryder Cup teams that we selected, Ben, and he's taken offence, and he's made sure that he's turning around his game, because a lot of people have been talking about the teams, and he's generally not making the cut at the moment. So it's an eye-catching performance, and for what it's worth, I hope he makes the team, because he is an elite player ultimately, and it's just you don't want to see him sort of struggling to make cuts and that. So he's definitely turned a corner. So it's good to see.
We haven't got many major champions in our side, have we? I just say the one sort of fascinating thing is that actually now the problem is he goes to play some links golf, and he doesn't like links golf. Now, I know he's been second in the Scottish Open at the Renaissance before. I know his best Open is actually at Portrush, so you can spin it a positive way. But I think in an ideal world, you'd want to go from here. And actually, it made me wonder, why not? Well, I know the answer. He's busy the next fortnight, but he went to college for a bit in Chicago, didn't he? And the John Deere Classic this week, if he'd have gone there, he'd have been 25-1 third favourite. He could easily have turned the putter around and gone and won. But I know he's got bigger things to worry about than that, I suppose.
Yes. Right, I'm going to take us on to the Hotel Planet Tour, the Le Vaudreuil Golf Challenge. David Horsey won, so second English winner in a row. We should mention the fact that Eddie Pepperell was in a tie for the lead going into the final round, and how's your luck? He had to pull out with a bad back. And I can't honestly remember the last time that a 54-hole leader has had to pull out with injury. I mean, it must have been really bad. I mean, normally you just think, just pop a few painkillers and give it a shot if you're in the tie for the lead. But it must have been bad for him to pull out. So I don't want to make it all about Eddie Pepperell. It was great to see David Horsey win again. Someone else who's long-term DP World Tour player who's lost their card, and hopefully this will go a long way to getting it back. But
yeah,
your thoughts, man.
The only thing really to add to that is that, and I know a lot of people have seen me tweet about it, but he and James Morrison are friends. They both turned 40 this year. When James Morrison won the Open de España 10 years ago, not only was Dave Horsey on the final green with a bottle of champagne, but it was only a couple of months later that he won in Denmark. So I sort of feel a little bit like that was one that got away. He was about 66-1. Well done, Jamie Worsley. I saw put him up, so that's a great shout. But above all else, I just love that that's happened. We've talked about it a lot lately with that little cluster of Scottish players plus Richard Mansell on the DP World Tour, clearly sort of inspiring each other to get off the mark in some cases. And here it's two players who are in exactly the same stage in their career, right? They're trying to get one more go at the DP World Tour, and after the last fortnight, they've still got work to do, but both of them are now things are in their control, right?
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to talk about in reference to this. I'm going to go back to Eddie Pepperell, who knows what would have happened had he played the final round, but he was obviously very much in the mix to win the thing. And I find it interesting that he took a break, around about a month's break, basically just needed some time away from the game, right, to regroup. Potgieter basically did exactly the same thing. So he had the best part of a month off after the Colonial, where he finished tied 6th. Best part of a month off, and he went back home to South Africa, made some club changes, didn't play a lot of golf apparently, and then he's come back immediately and won. And I wonder whether actually taking a break is sort of underrated in the world of professional golf. Now I realise that it's not possible for everyone. It's one thing someone like someone like Potgieter, who'd already had he's basically got his card locked up already for next year before this week. But so someone who's 110th in the FedEx Cup ranking can't afford to take a month off because that could harm them. But when you have the ability to do that and just take 3 or 4 weeks, just recharge, there might be something in it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sort of part of the problem, isn't it, with being left to choose your own schedule? It's really hard to turn down the chance to play for, if you're on the PGA Tour, millions of dollars. Like, to take a step away from that. I suppose Potgieter, I don't know, would he have been able to play Canada and maybe one of the other events that's happened subsequently that all blend into one? So he missed a couple of tournaments, but yeah, it's interesting that he did that. I haven't read the quotes and stuff, but if he did it because he just felt, I need a break, I need to reset, that's really shows a maturity, doesn't it? As you said, he had something of the sort of luxury of doing it. Eddie's reasons for taking a break were different. And obviously, if you do play on the Challenge Tour, the Hotel Planet Tour, there are some sort of forced gaps in the calendar. A lot of players take unwanted breaks where they're just, sitting waiting for a game, I suppose. But it's probably not quite the same as as a reset and going home and taking some time off. So, yeah, it's hard, isn't it? It's a year-round game, and those who are able to get on top of what works best for them, it's got to help.
Yeah, I'm just going to rattle through the remaining events that happened last week. So the LPGA, it was the Dow Championship, a team event. Smylie and Ji-hee Im won their first event. It was an interesting one, actually, because it went to a playoff. And so Lexi Thompson and Megan Kang were paired together. And Megan Kang missed probably a 5-foot putt, I think, to extend the playoff. So that probably didn't thrill Lexi Thompson, the unretired Lexi Thompson. But all the same, some maiden winners on the LPGA. Ladies European Tour, the Amundi German Masters. Shannon Tan won. That's her second title on the Ladies European Tour. I think she's only 21 years old, so obviously a huge career ahead of her. LIV Dallas. Now this is notable. So Patrick Reed won. I think I'm correct in saying it's his first win on LIV. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It doesn't feel right to me that that's his first win. But
yeah, he's won has he won a couple of the Asian international series events?
The international series. That's why I'm
LIV Life or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
But it's interesting because he's sort of potentially throwing his hat back in the Ryder Cup ring. I think it'd be fair to say. And the other notable thing, Sergio Garcia managed to seal his Open spot. So basically, there's a new the RNA have now got a thing where the top, I believe you have to be in the top 5 in the LIV rankings, and then it's the top player not already eligible. I think I'm correct in saying. Slightly complicated one.
Absolutely nailed it there, Sam.
Good. Good.
Yeah, and it's in both cases. I mean, Patrick Reed said before LIV Dallas that his Ryder Cup prospects would ultimately come down to how he plays in the Open. I don't know if that's true. Like, if he wins a couple more LIV events, might it not matter how he played in the Open? Obviously, the key thing there, and it's the same with Sergio for me, it's like you'd need to be a fly on the wall and really understand what relationships are like within both locker rooms. But Sergio has been pretty poor after a brilliant start to the year. And the Open for him, unless his LIV form does improve, the Open for him does feel massive. If he's to have any chance, I think at the moment it's a very, very slim chance of him playing for Europe. Whereas Reed, all comes down to relationships. I think if you didn't have that concern, you'd say he's like between 10th and 14th in the pecking order, and therefore it's a big chance, right?
Yeah. Last event to mention, we'll just briefly mention this, a US Senior Open. Padraig Harrington won. The only sort of thing that to know is that there was an altercation, wasn't there, with Roger Maltby. I believe it's kind of a bit of handbags at dawn, really. I think it's something like Roger Maltby wasn't helping him look for a ball, but he was trying to sort of, obviously commentate on it. And I believe that they both apologised and it all ended well, and Padraig won and everyone's happy. So
I'm glad Padraig apologised because I thought he was a bit harsh, but he feels like a person. There is nothing you could do to offend Padraig Harrington more than break the laws of golf etiquette. Like, you could do almost anything. You could kidnap his dog, please don't. You could do anything. You could leave horrible comments in Paddy's YouTube videos, but the moment you fail to look for a lost ball, you are dead. You are dead to him, and that seemed to be what happened. It was very much an argument for the social media age. Like, in years gone by, no one was stood there with a camera. To be fair as well, I don't really know as I liked it being filmed. It was a private dispute. It didn't feel like
I agree with that.
Public. But I'm glad Padraig's apologised because I was very much on Roger's side. But there we are.
Right, in the news. So the most notable thing really that happened last week, so it was a PGA Tour Town Hall meeting with the new CEO, Brian Rolapp. Adam Schupak of Golf Week did a little article on this. And basically, obviously there were several things discussed, but one notable point was the fact that he was asked about LIV and how things are going with the PIF agreement and everything. And he basically said the two sides are still at loggerheads with no resolution in sight. So the tour is basically refusing to capitulate on certain matters, particularly the team concept. Basically, the PGA Tour do not want the team concept to be integrated into the PGA Tour. And Yasser is refusing to budge on that. He wants that to be a future component of any deal. So until that is resolved, which it feels like it's not going to be, there probably won't be a deal. So, yeah.
Well, the question becomes then, when do you stop negotiating? Like, if it's a firm, if it's not compatible, like LIV won't budge and the PGA Tour won't budge, well, let's stop wasting time and just carry on.
Just leave it.
But there is only one fascinating thing about the LIV PGA Tour dynamic at the moment. It's not these negotiations. It is expiring contracts. There is nothing else fascinating about this. As contracts expire, what happens to these players? That is genuinely interesting. Can't keep Schupak out of the news, though, can you? So he's had a big week for his mentions, I presume.
He certainly has. I think you're referencing Colin Morikawa, who took issue to a quote that he published last week, and Morikawa seems to have a way of, I don't know what it is, like when he's interviewed, he's not a horrible person, but for some reason he just comes across as he really just irks everyone. The way he talks, it's sort of slightly entitled. I don't know. I can't quite.
I think entitled is a really good choice of word there. I was about to say he does have the appearance, whether he is or not. He has the appearance of someone who's not been told no very often.
Maybe that's it. Yeah. Either way, he continues to not really do himself any favors in front of the press conference cameras. But anyway, Adam Schupak removed the offending quote from the article, and
that's the saddest part of all of it, isn't it? But there we are. Yeah.
Right, I'm going to whisk us onto the world of golf this week. And first up, the BMW International Open at Eichenried it's been there since 2021. I mean, a few years previous as well, but certainly the last 4 editions have been there. Sergio makes his first DP World Tour start since September 2022. Ben,
is that the infamous withdrawal from Wentworth?
I believe so. Yeah.
Welcome back.
And this particular tournament is where he had the locker room meltdown. Is that right?
Yeah, it is the locker room meltdown tournament. I'll just, if you don't mind, read. This is an extract from a story in the Telegraph. I believe it will have been by James Corrigan. I apologise if it's not correct, but a source told the Telegraph, Sergio flew off the handle shouting, "This tour is your all. You should have taken the Saudi money." Way to endear yourself to your peers. And one of the notable parts of this is that Bob McIntyre was there and by all accounts was disgusted. And then a couple of days later, McIntyre tweeted, "Amazing how fast you can lose respect for someone you've looked up to all your life." And when we come to Sergio in the Ryder Cup, this is what, for me, sums it. Like, unless he's apologised to people like Bob, the darling of the European locker room, like, there shouldn't. I don't think there should be a place for him. We talked about non-apologies last week. I'm fine with private apologies. We don't need to know about it. But if he wants to be on that Ryder Cup team, which I think is fanciful at the moment, you'd like to think he's tried to build some bridges. But yeah, locker rooms, eh? If you could have cameras in all the locker rooms, wouldn't you learn some stuff?
Well, I got a question for you, Ben, in relation to this. So, in the same way that the PGA Tour have press conferences every week, and we watch, Colin Morikawa make an idiot of himself, do the DP World Tour have the same thing? Because I very rarely see it outside of maybe the Scottish Open, Wentworth possibly. But like, for example, this week, will there be press conferences?
No. Well, there might be because it's BMW sponsored, so they might do. There'll be quite a good media setup in Munich, I would think. But week to week now, no. They would be just grabbing players on the range for on the putting green and on the range for content on the DP World Tour website. But there's no great media presence and getting players in front of the media. It's just the place the tour is in now, I suppose.
I suppose so, yeah. It's just a
shame
because
you were hoping Sergio might be up there on facing the hacks. I don't think that's. Well,
I mean, it'd be the perfect opportunity, I think, for him to apologise. I mean, someone basically to ask him a question. So, Sergio, you're back on the DP World Tour for the first time since what happened, in 2022. Do you have any comments on that? And that'll be his perfect opportunity to say, you know what? Yes, I do. I made some mistakes. I'd like to apologise, but also I'd like to move on. Sorry, there's a Wyndham Clark joke.
BMW and Eichenried and the good people of Munich. Yeah. I'd like to see it, but no, it's not happening. It's not happening.
Okay, right. John Deere Classic. So this is the interesting thing with the John Deere Classic this week. It's the strongest field in several years, and I believe you got some comments on this, Ben, in relation to signature events.
Yeah, well, just to say really that I, again, was just looking, I've been voyeuristic on my social media the last few days, but I've been an advocate of enhancing the size of signature event fields, making them nice and easy to understand, 100 players with a cut, etc. I think there were loads of positives to that. But it was Rob Ops, forgive me, don't know his full name, but a Twitter account who tends to analyse golf in a really thoughtful way. And a discussion with Bob Harrig, ESPN Sports Illustrated, who's covered everything that's gone on between LIV and the PGA Tour and loads more over the last few years. They sort of argued that the knock-on effect of making signature events bigger would be that you've got another 30 players who then don't need to play the John Deere Classic. And it's a really good point. My only thing against it would be that actually, to what extent do players 79 to 100 on the PGA Tour differ from players 101 to 120 or whatever. Like, you know, there'll be some examples, specific ones, but broadly speaking, this is a collection of interchangeable players of similar talent. So depends on the size of your membership and all those other things. I don't think it means the signature event expansion has no legs, but it is definitely a consideration. And the John Deere Classic is, I mean, field strength is based on OWGR, which we all know is at the moment quite flawed. But I don't think there's any doubt this is a good field. You know, you've got Jason Days playing, for instance. Now he's a player who is in the signature event, so the logic doesn't quite square there. But I don't. The other thing to say with this is that the John Deere Classic has moved as well, hasn't it? It used to be the week before the Open, so that also is a factor. I presume it means Jason Day's not playing the Scottish, but I wouldn't know for sure on that.
Yeah, I don't know on that. It's an interesting one though for him to choose the John Deere over the Scottish Open, which obviously a lot of people looked to as a good warm up for the Open. So yeah, that is a good point. And you know, I did actually start compiling a list of things. It's a very short list that I like about the signature events, and I've added this to the list. That it can increase the the field strength of other events. So the other two things that I like are the fact that you have two balls. Generally, not always, but most of the time you have two balls, which is good for pace of play. And the other thing, what was the other thing? There was one more thing. I can't even remember. It's such a short list, you see. I can't even remember. But yeah, I'll remember the other one at some point. But yeah, there are benefits to it. I don't know. For me, the only disappointing thing is just the fact that those players who you might get squeezed out, who are obviously very good players. Maybe they've just not had a bad season or whatever, and they just end up, by virtue of just a few bad performances at the wrong time, can really affect their whole career. And obviously everyone's got the ability to turn it around and make it back. But someone like JJ Spawn is a good example where, he managed to find some good results at the right time. But had he not, he could well be on his way to the Corn Ferry Tour next year.
It's a very fair point, and I do think there is a challenge there with like. It's the same, a lot of different things. Like the Ryder Cup's probably a good example, right? I think on the US side, there's some people like start collecting points about 18 months ago or something. It's like, well, is it relevant? I don't know. And with the signature things, the idea that through your performances now you can be securing starts in the signature events next June. It almost feels like you could segment them more and have a little bit more. There has been high turnover of players, where pretty much on the expectation the PGA Tour laid out. I would say overall it feels like, and we criticize the PGA Tour sometimes, which is what we should do, but like in general things are going quite well. Like the viewership's good, and I actually think a lot of people are being sort of won round by signature events. I just think it's more about refining them now. I think in principle they've worked, but I still think there could be more of a narrative from one to the next. And certainly, one thing I would push back on that Bob was talking about, or whoever it was, it might have been Rob Ops actually saying that, the players wouldn't want to lose one of these events because it's worth 20 million. It's like, well, of course, they're not the people to ask. A lot of these guys, if you said to them, oh, it's Wednesday of Masters Week, we're going to play 100 million scramble down the road at the local pitch and putt, they'd turn up, wouldn't they? It's the money is the money. It makes them turn up. So I think we should try and take them out of it to some extent, but it is a player-led organisation, so that's hard to do.
I've been able to look up the second thing I like, which is pretty minor actually, is that everyone starts on the first hole.
Oh, that's not minor, Sam. That's a good one. Do they always do that in the Siggies? I don't know.
Well, maybe not always. That's the thing. I think I was maybe they did in the Travelers, and that's when I was making my list. But,
right. Sure. Yeah. No. Starting on one is great. It's the best thing. Well, it's not the best thing about the Open. What a ridiculous thing to have said, even though I'm correcting it immediately. It's one of the great understated things about the Open. Not if you're writing copy in the media centre at 11 o'clock at night, but that's by the by.
Right. A couple more events to talk about this week. So it's the Interwetten Open in Austria. Now, this is a good time to remind you to sign up for our newsletter because Ben does a Hotel Planet Tour preview every week. There were a couple who only just missed out on a place last week. I know that because I had money on Stephen Brown, and he just stalled really on the final round. But it's definitely worth signing up just so you get access to those free previews, and if anything else, it gives you some good pointers as to what to look out for. And there'll be one tomorrow for the Interwetton Open. Any comments on that, Ben, or are you just going to leave it to?
We've got a bit more to get through, haven't we? I'll leave it for the newsletter. Yeah, please do subscribe. Okay. The one thing we are going to have to monitor it. Challenge Tour betting. I was asked last week which bookmakers do it. Bet365 usually first now, but I'm slightly worried that Sky Bet, having been prominent in this product over the last 15 years, may move away from it. And if that happens, other firms will move away from it, and you could end up with like 2 or 3 bookmakers doing it. It would be a real shame. We'll monitor it. Yeah. We'll reconsider if we have to.
Okay. The other 2 events, very quickly, the Asian Tour is the International Series Morocco, and the Ladies European Tour is the KPMG Women's Irish Open at Carton House. Now, the last event that's happening, which is happening tomorrow, is Open Final Qualifying. Now, we wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about this. So there's 4 sites. There's Burnham and Barrow, there's Dundonald Links, there's Royal Cinque Ports, and there's West Lancashire. Now, Ben and I have been through the fields, and I'm taking the 2 southern ones, and Ben is taking the 2 northern ones. Well, one, of course, is in Scotland, so it's very far north. But I will make a start, Ben, and I'm going to talk about Burnham and Barrow. So this, you may remember, is where Justin Rose qualified last year before, obviously, heavily contending to win Troon. Now, first player I'll mention is his co-medalist. Then was a guy named Dominic Clemens, who's in the field this week at Burnham and Barrow, and I think they were 3 clear of everyone else. So he might be one worth looking at. Some other notable ones: Lahiri lost out in a playoff to qualify. He's playing again this week. He's been playing pretty well on LIV. Not ideal flying over from Dallas, but maybe worth monitoring. Harry Hall, it may be even less ideal flying over from Detroit after being, really in contention, to be honest. But he's obviously playing well at the moment, and it'll be relatively comfortable for him. Someone from Cornwall, not too far away. Danny Walker is also making his way over. He's an interesting one, I thought, to find in the field. He missed the cut in Detroit, but he's making his way over for final qualifying. And then a few European Tour players. You got Brandon Robertson Thompson, who I like, Jakob Skov-Olesen, and a couple of legends, Chris Wood, Ollie Wilson. Really random one who I saw in there, Doc Redman. I don't know where he popped up from. He's playing in the Corn Ferry Tour nowadays. But it's sort of, when you see a name like that, it's like, whoa, Doc, what are you doing? And then Max Weaver. Now, this is an interesting one because he's the brother of Tyler Weaver, who qualified for the US Open. And then if I was to
jockey Jason Weaver.
That's right, yes. And then if I was to throw out a real outside bet, not that I've looked at the prices yet, I must say, but Benjamin Follett-Smith, the Zimbabwean, because he led the field in strokes gained approach in Italy, which is something, a stat that I always like. So
yes. I think he won a couple, maybe just one of the 36-hole Clutch Pro Tour events in the pandemic summer of 2020.
Oh, okay.
So I think he was based in Cornwall for a bit, and won at least one of those. He's very, very streaky, so I quite like that. Just one thing on Chris Wood, he played with Rose here last year, and he almost qualified. I think he might have missed by a few shots in the end, but he was right in the mix to qualify. And the reason I mention it is because after that, Rose said, I can see that he's close again.
Yeah.
And I wondered at the time, I think I wondered out loud, as I always do on Twitter at the time, how much of a injection of confidence that might be for Chris Wood to hear that from someone like Justin Rose. And obviously it's taken a while, but Chris Wood's played some better golf lately, so he's one. It would be great if he could qualify, and I think he must have a realistic chance.
Yeah. Right, Dundonald Links, Ben?
I'll take us to Dundonald. So I was quite excited when I looked at the betting for the Dundonald qualifier, because at 20-1 was Rafa Cabrera-Bello, and immediately think, well, he won the Scottish Open at Dundonald. But not only that, last week he shot 76, 63, 67, 70 to finish about 20th in the Italian Open. And for about 6 weeks now, he's been catching the eye. Curiously, for a player who used to be like a pure ball striker who could not chip and seldom hold a putt, he's become a great chipper and putter, and he can't hit the thing. So the evolution of Rafa Cabrera-Bello is a fascinating thing that deserves its own podcast. But unfortunately, while he's still in the betting, he does not appear on the Open qualifier list of entrants. So maybe he's had a change of heart. Maybe he's not feeling great. Who knows? But it seems that he's not playing. In his absence, though, the one that I thought was most interesting was Angel Hidalgo, who came through this last year. The reason that I'm interested in him here is that actually his ball striking last week in Italy was his best statistically since he won in Spain at Jon Rahm's expense. So it's been a bit of a struggle since then. As it always happens, there were people talking in Ryder Cup terms for him after that. And he's basically not done anything, but he's starting to show something. So maybe a return to Dundonald will help. In terms of class players, we've got Alex Noren. I think for him, it's like boom or bust. If you really want to get a chance at the Ryder Cup, then you've got to play in the Open. I think that's almost certain. You've got a couple of live players who face the same travel issues from Dallas. You've got Wenyi Ding. But just as well a word for Daniel Young. He's a bit obvious in some ways, but he's quite a big price. He's finished third and second on the Hotel Planet Tour the last couple of weeks. Shot around a 60, I think, the week before last, rather. He's Scottish, but it's not just that he's Scottish. When I look closer, he's actually raised his game in Scotland, and he's not played a lot of good golf when he's had chances on the DP World Tour, but he was 12th in the Hero Open a couple of years ago. I think that would have been at Fairmont St Andrews, and his last 3 Scottish Challenge performances, all top 25. So I think he'll go really well, actually. So yeah, it'd be Daniel Young and Angel Hidalgo for me.
Nice. All right, Royal Cinque Ports. It's a notable one. Matthew Southgate was the medalist here last year. Again, I think it was by 3 shots or something, and he's back in the field, so he could be an interesting one. Obviously, loves links golf. The interesting players who are in the field really is Graham McDowell. Feels like a particularly important one for him, with it being a home Open for him at Port Rush, of course. Then you've got Ian Poulter with his son Luke, both in the field. And then there's some couple of class players there. I mean, it's a really strong heat, to be honest. You've got Rasmus Nergaard Peterson. It's in the field. You got players like Eric Van Rooyen coming over from Detroit, David Puig, Dean Burmester, who've both been playing all right on LIV. Tyler Weaver, who I mentioned, is his brother playing the other one. So I'm going to be cheering for Robert Dinwiddie, who I followed in regional qualifying. I had a little email back and forth with him since. Lovely chap. I offered to be his caddy, but he has got someone else on the pag, which is kind of relief because I couldn't do it.
You shot
anyway.
your shot, or whatever it is. So well done.
Exactly. Couple sort of long shots to mention. So Mathis Lefebvre and Riccardo Fantanelli both played well at the Amateur Championship that was hosted here just over a week ago, actually. It was hosted here in Royal St George. Lefebvre made it to the quarterfinals. Fantanelli made it to the semis. They're both triple-figure prices. It's a strong field, like I say, so I don't know if I necessarily have high expectations, but just a couple to call out. Ben, West Lancashire.
That's a great shout that they had the amateur host across the 2 courses. That's interesting, isn't it? I'm sure someone will use that experience and at least play well. So yeah, West Lancs. The notable thing here is that if we go back to last year, Daniel Brown crept through, and then 2 weeks later, he's got a chance to win the Open. So of all the majors, I know, we think of Michael Campbell and the US Open qualifying story probably first and foremost, but I think the Open's the one where you feel like coming through final qualifying and winning the thing is probably the most achievable. So we'll see how this lot get on. We've got a couple of live players again, Lucas Herbert and Harold Varner. Varner, of course, played really well in Dallas, but 4 days in that heat, flying over, I can't see that that's ideal. Same issue for Sam Horsfield. He started to play a bit better, and he qualified through this last year as well. And it was great as well in the entries to see, you mentioned Doc Redman and Danny Walker, Davis Shaw from the Corn Ferry Tour is coming over. And those American names, there's only one conclusion really for me, is that they must really value the Open, and they must have grown up watching, Danny Walker's probably a bit too young, I don't know, but maybe someone like Ben Curtis, Todd Hamilton, winning the Open and felt I want to do that one day, and it's great. Same token, we had an American winner of the Amateur Championship, and there not enough Americans enter it. It surprises me how few do. So it was great to see that. In terms of more notable players on the European side, we've got Alex Fitzpatrick, who's playing well. Kieran Vincent, who's playing very well. He won in South Africa last time. Kazuma Kabori, I thought 25-1 was pretty fair, actually. He's got a deadly short game over 36 holes. That's no bad thing. Obviously, Sam Bairstow's got an obvious chance. The fact that he lost the Amateur Championship final to Aldrich Potgieter might be a little source of inspiration. And I've got 4 more to mention quickly. Ashley Mansell, you saw him. You thought he was pretty good. Ashton Turner, massive price, but he has qualified twice before for the Open. So he's been there and done it, and he did it at Portrush. Nice. Angel Ayora, who I think, along with Kabori, they'd be the 2 that I think are the bets, like at the value. Like, Ayora's a bigger price than Fitzpatrick. Well, he was almost half the price of him last week and played better. Just because they're playing links golf, the assumption is the Englishman must be better. Finally, Richard Tedder, the Estonian amateur champion. Already you think, wow, that's a qualification which merits interest. He's a Latvian amateur champion as well, but he's played well in the last 2 amateur championships, and is a top 100 amateur golfer with a bright future, I think. And obviously for a country like Estonia, it would be great to see that flag flown at Portrush, wouldn't it?
Definitely. Right, Ben, we are rapidly running out of time. I'm going to mention we forgot to do player tracker last week, which could have been very bad had Ayora won, because at one point it looked like he might, because he was a 36-hole leader. I will just mention they are both in the field this week. Do you have any thought? I mean, Elvis is not in a great patch of form at the moment, but do you fancy Ayora's chances here?
Well, he's going on Tuesday to play 36 holes and it does happen. You get guys who go from it to play really well. I think Matt Southgate did it last year, actually. But in general, I'd have it as a bit of a negative. But yeah. I'm not going to talk you out of it. He's a proper player. So, but I don't think it's ideal.
Right. So fancy game. So Lewis Blaine is still leading. We've got Garvin Howarth is back in second. No, you can't do your joke again about the YouTube.
It's
done. But you can give us your picks, Ben.
Okay. Jordan Smith, Jaden Shaper again, Daniel Hillier, Matty Schmidt, Laurie Cantor, and Dan Bradbury. You may notice that is 6 absolute flushers. And I know, it's a bit of a cliche. You've got to hit the ball well. When have you not? But I can read is like last year, Ewan Ferguson, Jordan Smith. They're very similar players who just hit the hell out of the ball. They don't make big mistakes off the tee. I think that's what you're looking for, really. Parkland Golf, the Belfry is a good link. Galgore Castle is an amazing guide. Unfortunately, they don't play there a lot, but they did play their Challenge Tour last year. So check that out.
All right, nice. Well, I've kept it. I'm trying to go for flushes as well, to be honest. Nirgal Peterson, just because he's very good. Obviously, your point taken about the final qualifying is not ideal, but I just think he's a very good player, really. Hao Tong Lee, he's had a bit of a break, so I'm going back to my thing about taking a break. So he's taking a break, he's coming back. He's won this event before. I like him. Chikara, I did have Patrick Reed, and I actually took him out because I thought I'd come in Dallas, and then I don't know, I'm not sure. So I've actually replaced him with Chikara. Who just, the way he hits the ball, I think it could suit. It's obviously his debut here. Hillier, I've joined you on that one. He's got some good course form, and I think he's playing better than his results suggest as well, actually, at the moment. Dan Torp, it's a bit of a flyer, but he's 6th here last year. He played well in Italy, shot 64 last time here.
You've definitely not used your quota of 5 yens Dan Torps, have you? So
I definitely have not.
To worry about there.
I have used him once though. And anyway, my last one, I have to have a German in the field. I was toying with Schneider, but I've actually gone for Matty Schmidt in the end. Just kind of drop in grade. I wouldn't be put off by his last couple of starts because he's had a virus, so he's basically, as far as I'm concerned, he's still playing well. He was very good at Colonial. A few weeks ago. I love that
you've gone for the virus inspiration angle after Adrien Saddier. That's lovely stuff.
Exactly. Right, Ben. Now, highest bidder. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay.
You're saying this with like a man who's seen it and feels confident, so I'm ready.
It's the highest bidder. It's the highest bidder. It's the highest bidder. It's the highest bidder.
Well, that was wonderful, Sam. Those watching on YouTube may realise that I had no idea that was coming. Beautiful. What a job you've done there.
It's quite cheesy, but I felt like it needed to be.
It's a jingle, Sam. What else? The number one requirement is for it to be somewhat cheesy.
Fair point. Right. Anyway, my good friend Chris Curtis has sent us in one this week. I haven't seen it, but I will read it out quickly. So, There have been 11 British winners of the BMW International Open since it started in 1989. How many can you name? Oh my God. That's really hard.
What's the lowest bid we've had in highest bidder? 11 British winners of this
particular event.
International Open. All right, I can think of like.
I mean, I can have a go at 2. Oh no, yeah, 3. I can't. I'm going to embarrass myself. So no, you go for your 3.
So Ewan Ferguson, who won it last year. Yeah. Danny Willett won it, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did. Pretty sure. I can check, but.
So for my third and final one, I'm trying to remember. Oh no, why am I trying to remember that? I was going to say Thomas Bjorn, but famously Danish. Sorry, my third one, BMW International Open. I'm just going to say Colin Montgomery, which is a guess because he's won a lot of golf tournaments. I don't think he is on the Roll of Honour here.
Okay, well, that's a reasonable guess. Let's have a look. Danny Willett is correct.
He won it at the other course, didn't he?
I'm going to have.
Did David Howell?
If you haven't got this,
no, David Horsey won it in 2010, didn't he?
You've told me one, Ben. I could have.
Nick Doherty's won it. Oh, sorry, I've forgotten the whole format.
No, Colin Montgomery has won it. He won it in '99.
I fluked it. But I did then say Doherty and Horsey who won it back-to-back years, 2009, 2010.
Also,
and I said David Howell. Did I say David Howell just now? I thought I did. So
you might have done. Incidentally, that was the one that I was going to sort of guess. It was going to be an educated guess, but maybe it was somewhere in the back of my mind. But anyway, you got 4 or 5 in the end. So actually, you did better than you expected to do.
Yeah. So we missed Sandy Lyle, David Feherty. Russell Claydon and Lee Westwood. Dead to me. Just a joke. All right. I mean, that wasn't the highest bidder, was it?
Oh, it's a bit. Let's put some respect on the name of Chris Curtis. No.
I mean,
sorry, you're talking about our performance.
No, it's a fabulous category. Topical. Difficult but not impossible. Wonderful. More of the same.
Yes.
I just mean that when we're bidding 2 and 3, we're clearly.
No, you're right. I know. And this is the problem: is that my knowledge, and I think we've talked about it, doesn't go back beyond about 2010, and even that is generous. Right. Anyway, but we have a theme now, and the last thing I'll say before signing it off is, unless we get a cancellation, which I'm hoping won't happen, it hasn't happened to date. We've got Ryan Fox coming on the podcast this week. We're going to have a special episode coming out later this week, and we're excited to talk to him because he has won twice very recently. He's a great player. By all accounts, he's a lovely bloke. So I'm excited about that, and I think he'll love to hear the highest bidder theme as well. We need to think of a topic for him, but thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back with a special episode soon with Ryan Fox, and we'll be back, of course, next week.